Hello? Good evening, and we're back. For some people, it's the afternoon because yeah, when you're on the internet, you're on the whole world. So I would like to say hello to the streamers and thank you for the patience. We're gonna finish off this conference for today because we still have a day for tomorrow with a roundtable discussion. Of course, Daniel List, who would moderate this panel, is still on his way. So we had to think of something, and who follows the Secret Space Program knows Jay Whitener. So I would like to introduce Jay Whitener as the moderator of this panel. And I want to give one disclaimer. Jim Mars had to go. He had other obligations. So that's why he's not on the panel. And one thing for tomorrow, we're going to start at a normal time, so 9 o'clock. Okay, Jay?
Thank you. All right, can you hear me? Okay, so I had 45 minutes to prep, so I'm going to do my best. I guess one of the things I'm really interested in, and since we've got our esteemed panel, is kind of the propaganda around the secret space program. I think that's what interests me in some ways the most, the way that Hollywood plays with our minds and tries to make us think one thing while actually another thing's happening, while also slipping little elements of the truth in. And so that's one of the things, my ballywick, I guess you might say, in this whole thing. So I'm kind of interested in that. So we have Joe Farrell and Jay Dyer and Paul LaViolette and Walter Bosley. Thank you. And they all have their own point of view on the secret space program. And I don't know, your own, is it okay if the crowd asks questions? Good, good. So maybe we should take that tact and since you didn't do any Q&A today, it'll give us a chance for you guys to ask these guys questions. Is that okay? Okay. Anybody got any questions? Who did 9/11? Okay, there's a question right here with this young lady.
Hi, all of you. It's been wonderful to see you offering your good stuff. I'm wondering if any of you have any comments to make about some of the secret space program insiders that are starting to come out, like Corey Good and Randy Kramer, and if you have thoughts on some of the intel that they're sharing.
Yeah, something comes to mind. I think that it's good to hear what, so-called, I don't mean that in a negative way when I say so-called, but what we call whistleblowers. But what we have to keep in mind from my perspective is that if they were actually connected with anything, some of what they might be saying could be stuff it's toxin, it's fake, that's been given to them or put into their consciousness or whatever you want to call it, that isn't real, isn't true, and it's been put in there to discredit them. It's it's disinformation, so to speak. So we do have to be careful with some of this stuff because as exciting as it might be, it just, it could very well be disinformation. So that's just something to consider.
Paul, I know you got some feelings on this.
I agree entirely. Another example would be the Philadelphia experiment, and several authors writing books about time travel, connecting with the Montauk Project, creating a wormhole to the past and people coming through and this sort of stuff. The technique in disinformation is to mix a lot of far out stuff in so that you end up not believing anything. And then they've accomplished their goal.
Jay, you got anything?
Not so much on whistleblowers. That's not. I tend to be skeptical in general. Skeptical of Snowden, for example. I think that he's an example of somebody who, were he really a whistleblower, would he be given media spotlight like he is? That's my opinion. But when it comes to the secret space program, you know, my field is more philosophical, more Hollywood-based, so I don't think I'm the guy for that one.
Joe, you got anything?
Yeah. I'm a researcher. I'm a documents guy, so I don't do whistleblowers. You know, and there's a place for that. You know, that's a legitimate field of research and reporting and so on and so forth. But I don't do it. So I'm kind of inherently prejudiced against the idea. I believe if you're going to argue a plausible case about something, it has to be from sources, reasoned argument, reasoned speculation, reverse engineering the science models that you think might be involved in advanced technology or whatever. Anyone can get up in front of a camera and a microphone and tell a story and claim that, and produce records that they did X, Y, Z for the government at such and such a time. I think we have to get in this alternative community, we have to get back to a culture of research and documentation. That said, I think it highly unusual that coming into this conference, I began to notice, and I started asking people, are you noticing as the conference gets closer, the meme of secret space program is appearing on the internet? And we started having, you know, whistleblowers pop up and talking about it. And I find that incredibly suspicious. But I'm a researcher, so, you know, I'm like Jay, I'm inherently skeptical of whistleblowers until I see a corroborating story with some evidence to back it up.
Did you have a follow-up?
Do you think there is no place for, I mean, Joseph Farrell, you had mentioned that there was not, that just was not how you do your research. Is there no place for people who are expressing an experience in these programs that you all say exist? And what happens in the future when these people start to come forward and they are putting their lives on the line? And I'm not saying anyone in particular because I'm just postulating here, but how do we embrace these people who may, and this is just a, you know, pontification, come out and say, this is what I know? Do we give them a space at a secret space program conference?
Well, I don't organize the conference, so I can't speak for the conference organizers. I can speak only for myself. And from my point of view, it seems like this alternative research community, or whatever you wish to call it, is overpopulated by conferences telling stories. And to me, this is kind of a reminder, reminds me of the evangelical revivalist culture that we live in. Everybody is telling their personal story, but there's little contribution from researchers in this culture. So from my point of view, I welcome conferences like this because every one of the speakers is bringing a research point of view to this, be it whether they're interviewing whistleblowers or arguing from popular culture and what memes are appearing or investigating documents. So I can tell you for my part, in my research, I concentrate on documents. And I have had many people approach me offering, inside information and so on, and I just don't do it. I've told them, I'm not your man. There are others in this field that'll do that, but I'm not it.
You, sir?
Do you all believe that disclosure will occur within the next 10 years? And if so, how might that occur?
The question is, will disclosure happen in the next 10 years, and how might that occur?
My opinion is no, not the disclosure you're talking about where we'll all be, it will all be told over the TVs of the world or whatever by leaders. No. I think disclosure, if it happens, is going to be at the discretion of who's being disclosed. When they decide they want to reveal themselves, they will. But no, I don't think this big disclosure thing, it's not going to happen. We keep hearing about it, and it's always the next guy, the next president, or the next. It's not going to happen. Not like that.
Joe? I know you got something. You got something to say, I know.
Well, by background, I'm trained in academic theology, so I tend to smell a religion miles away. While I'm not part of, nor even really sympathetic to the evangelical kind of American civil religion version of Christianity, to me, the whole disclosure meme is kind of like the rapture and the people predicting when that's going to happen and reading the tea leaves of world events according to a theological school that they have gleaned by revelation or speaking in tongues or reading Clarence Larkin and the Bible Map of the Ages. Disclosure strikes me that way. It's a meme that has been driven, I think, consciously and deliberately into the UFO field. I suspect that part of this has been very deliberate on the part of the national security establishment. It just doesn't interest me, and I'm with Walter on that one. I agree foursquare.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I think we should bring this back into the legal field, and the more suits that we can bring against the federal government about UFOs, about how they cannot protect us, and if we can prove that they can't protect us, then they'd be forced to show us and actually reveal themselves. Don't you think?
I'll jump in again. What I learned as an OSI agent doing program protection was very enlightening. And here's the thing. I'm convinced that the U.S. government gave the custodianship, maintenanceship, and legal ownership of UFOs, so to speak, to the private contractors that designed and engineered them. Now, what that means legally is that's their proprietary material, and the Constitution does not force any company or private person to reveal their proprietary material to the public at all. They're not required to.
But
and they figured this out a long time ago, that if they hand it over to these private organizations, that no lawsuit by any citizens will ever get it revealed. And
But through discovery, all of that would have to come forward.
no, it's proprietary material. What you're talking about, the UFOs and stuff, it's proprietary material. It does not have to.
Okay, what I'm saying is, like, if you did a lawsuit against the federal government, they're supposed to be able to protect us, okay?
Right.
Say abduction happens, something happened to them that it's irrefutable, like they have something inside of them or whatever,
Uh-huh.
or a baby gets lost or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's irrefutable in a court of law. So
Right. In that scenario, if that's happening, I see your point.
who the heck is laughing? Why are you laughing? Hey, I didn't say me. I said, what if somebody?
It was a hypothetical, and I understand your hypothetical, but yeah.
You know, if you're one of those people that's gonna laugh and stuff, you really need to go. We're
Okay.
trying to be serious here, you know? Really serious.
Okay.
It's the people like you that give us a bad name.
All right, let's keep it going.
Okay, let's stay on track here. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you've heard of something that just happened. I'm sure you all have, but I got a hold of something on the internet by the Kesh Foundation talking about plasma generators, and a nuclear physicist from Iran who's given the blueprints to the world and showed a video of him giving it to the delegates, the ambassadors of the world, saying, we're trading you this for world peace. This is a free energy device, and it's now being taken to the governments of the world. Italy's supposed to be producing 1 million of these by the end of November. What do you guys think about that? Do you know about it?
I will take this one. We're also Global BEM, Breakthrough Energy Movement. We have invited Cash numerous of times to our event in the past. We saw 4 of his presentations. And let's this be clear right now. We had a private meeting with him, and he gave his word that he was going to show us something. We were there with university students of Delft, and he didn't show anything. He was rude to the people in the room. He is, for me, another diversion. Because he was telling that he was going to show something, or not, last week. Where is it? Where is it? He says that he is in contact with the people from Obama, from Putin. Yeah. And I think Joseph can address this. If you think that you can put free energy, and that's a lousy term in itself, we need to step away from that term. It's another diversion.
I want to say,
energy.
I think I put the word free energy there. I think he called it a plasma generator, but it's from the vortex, it's from the field, and I'm just wondering what kind of credibility that
if we
he has.
think that this is going to come from the government to support these kind of technologies, then we're very naive.
Yeah.
Joseph, can you also address that?
I get asked about Keshe a lot, and I've been asked about Keshe ever since he first claimed that he was going to reveal all of this stuff to the world 5 years ago, which he has not done. And in addition to this, you know, again, taking the academic research approach, I'm not a scientist like Dr. Laviolette, but I am trained in academic methods of research and documentation. I know the difference between an argument and a case and a hypothesis and a model of physics, and he has proposed nothing by way of a model of physics to claim that can address what he claims to be doing. So I've seen nothing from him. Therefore, I have never talked about him. I've never blogged about him, and I won't until I see something.
Have you seen the free download, the schematics of how to build one, any of that stuff?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think it's recently released. I'm curious, and I'm hopeful, and I wish it were true, and I'm trusting you guys to help us sort out the information. Thank you.
I already got 2 emails from people who try to replicate what he did, and they say it's a fake. They can't replicate it. There's nothing there, people. Move on.
I agree. That sums it up.
You.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Laviolette. I was intrigued by, I believe it was in your presentation when you were talking about what took down the Twin Trade?
The Twin Towers.
The Twin Towers, was that you? You made a thing about,
Yeah.
I got the right guy, okay, good. My question is, I'm wondering if you have read Dr. Judy Wood's book, and is there any correlation whatsoever to her theories and your subquantum kinetics or not? I mean, I'm just, because she's the one that's been saying it's an energy weapon, so I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say about that.
I haven't read her book, but I've read parts here and there. And I think she has some information on the internet, which I found very interesting. She's on the right track. There was directed energy weapon. And I'm just adding to that I believe it was microwave beam involved. In my book, I talk about the Mylar microwave platform. It was something was leaked at a conference in France. A friend of mine who speaks French was there, told me the story. Jacques Vallée was acting as a translator. And when the gentleman who was speaking began to diverge onto that topic, he said, "Taisez-vous," which means shut up in French. It's very interesting. It indicates this guy knew about something classified that involved a microwave device of some sort in space on a platform orbiting the Earth. And these beams that were developed in Project Skyvault would be the type of thing that could bring down a building. I mean, these can have peaceful utilization for aerospace propulsion, but if you aim them at a building long enough, it can turn the concrete into powder, just like they observed. The concrete was turning into dust in midair. We know of no other thing that would do that. Microwaves can be absorbed by the water in the concrete and turn it to dust. Also, with these microwave beams, if you change the frequency very slightly, rather than pushing against something, they can start drilling holes in it. So it can be a weapon, can be used as a weapon. Yeah.
Can I also address that? And maybe I'm a smartass right now, but let's introduce another meme here. Why there's so much confusion and nobody understands 9/11, what actually happened is because the operation was penetrated by another operation. And then the truth movement in 9/11, they're all divided in camps. You've got the thermite people, you've got the controlled demolition people, or they're in the same camp. You've got the direct energy weapon people from Dr. Judy Wood. You've got the mini nuke people. The mini nuke people, or the mini nuke, I'm not addressing that one. The controlled demolition, Building 7 was controlled demolition. The two towers, that was not controlled demolition. That doesn't say that there were no explosions in those towers. That's what I'm not saying. But the towers were dustified. What Mr. Laviolette is explaining, and what I think is going on, and that's not my own thoughts, but you hear nobody talking about that in the 9/11 Truth Movement, is that Group 1 was responsible for bringing down Building 7. They were responsible for the legislation that came later on. They were responsible for invading the countries. They were responsible for the whole hijacker scheme. Now, who brought down the towers is a different group. There's another player on the block who said to Group 1, look what we got. Because it doesn't make sense either way. There were two different technologies used that day. And nobody is discussing that because they're all pointing the finger at each other.
And they're all incriminated by the second group hitting the towers incriminates the first group, so they won't say anything. That's how it's working.
And as a possibility, they knew about the towers and then thought, this is a good opportunity to use our weapon. It's going to go down anyway, or at least it will be partially destroyed. We might as well do this and send a message to the world, look, we have this technology. And the whole world knows now that somebody has this ability, not the general public, but the people in governments and the intelligence services will pay quite a bit of attention what happened. They know that this wasn't normal. you know.
And Mr. Cash doesn't have anything. And a lot of people think that breakthrough energy or new energy or free energy doesn't exist. The mainstream thinks that, a lot of scientists think that, but it was on TV, right in front of your eyes. What happened to those towers? That is a breakthrough energy technology. It was right there, people.
I'll direct my question to the panel, and basically what I was going to ask about is to get speculation upon the size and scope of the secret space program. By that I mean we hear stories, for example, of underground bases connected by highly sophisticated maglev train systems. We hear of bases on the moon and Mars that we know of, possible further outposts out in the solar system, possibly some form or fashion of a fleet of starships capable of travel at least throughout our solar system, possibly beyond, possibly without limitation. I'm curious to get your speculation. Just how big is this? How many starships do we have? How many hundreds of people on one starship? Do we have a Starship Enterprise, for example? I'll just give you some ideas, but trying to get an idea as to what the size and scope of this program really is.
We should take the whole, everybody should probably give an answer.
Well, yeah, all of that. To a
All the
degree.
above.
To a degree, I think there is something basically like now in the 21st century,
yeah.
there's something basically like you described, particularly from my view, where there's two breakaway civilizations working on this for 160 years. There's
Two
lunar
being a
bases.
U.S. based and then another European base, whether it be Germany
Well,
or otherwise.
American originated. They
Okay.
are a breakaway civilization. We can't rightly even call them American anymore.
Because they broke away.
And then this NIMSA associated group, yes, they would have bases on the moon. They would have put boots on the ground on Mars. They would have these underground things. Yeah. So all
Also,
of that
other governments seem to be involved as well. So, for example, like with proposals of the Alternative 3 project. meaning that-
the government. How much governments are involved that's a different topic.
animal.
But as far as the breakaways are concerned, yeah, they would have this to a practical degree. Maybe not like Hollywood, but to a practical degree, in my opinion.
So
And it's
probably
probably privatized too, it's not government.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're breakaway. They are not affiliated with a government. Our governments might have agreements and treaties with them, yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
they are not
So they're
subject
not
to our
necessarily involved or
laws or our
overseen by the
government.
government. It could be the other way around, essentially.
What's that?
So it's not necessarily overseen or directed by the government. It's the other way
No,
around.
they are a breakaway civilization. They are sovereign unto themselves. They're not subject to our laws. They're not subject to our disclosure or our letters of anger or our stomping our feet saying we have a right to know. Ha ha. That's their reaction. They're not subject to us. They're truly independent.
Anybody else? Joe, you want to?
Well, I would take kind of a historical perspective in answer to your question. We don't really know what all of this money has bought or researched over the past few decades. We can guess, with that money awash in the system, and the difficulty of producing some of these technologies, that with that money awash in the system, the cost effectiveness is probably going to go down. In other words, you're going to be subject to inflation. You're going to be paying more and getting basically the same product that maybe Russia's getting for a tenth of the investment. And we've seen a demonstration of that principle recently. But my guess would be that you're looking at something rather akin to the beginning of the age of exploration. In other words, you don't have massive fleets like the Royal Navy, at Trafalgar, battling a massive Franco-Spanish fleet. You've probably got something much more limited in terms of the amount of equipment, ships, sailors, what you can actually deploy. So think Portugal in the 15th century rather than Great Britain, at the height of its power. That would be my best guess.
Well, I'm curious, why is it the U.S. government, so by extension the U.S. taxpayers, on the hook to fund this program if it's private and breakaway? Why aren't they self-funding?
Well,
That's how the money system
Now-
works.
yeah, I was maybe I was misleading. I didn't say that our governments didn't have some of this kind of stuff, and that's the stuff we've paid for, okay? But I thought your question was about the breakaways themselves.
well,
And
just
they have,
understand
they have their own means of resources. They're probably, I mean, there's evidence that they're out there mining
Yeah. Prior-
off-planet bodies, and if they're finding tons and tons and planets of gold and such, they don't need our tax dollars.
Yeah.
But, you know, the government stuff, what they do, again, they put it under the contractors, and it becomes proprietary material, and we don't have
Therefore
the
know it.
need to know. So that's what they'll argue,
Okay.
is what I'm saying.
So it's kind of like various breakaways. There's a secret aspects of the government and one or more breakaway.
There's breakaway aspects to the government programs, and there are actual breakaway civilizations, and they're
Privatized
two different
breakaways.
things.
Go ahead, you had a comment?
Well,
Thank you very much for being here. I am really curious, having spoken to a lot of leaders, including student leaders, students across the globe. A lot of people know a lot of this. They already know about disclosure because of internet, and their main concern is solutions. So I'm really curious from each of you, what is the aim, what is the next step aim of what each of you are working on, and what are some of the solutions and ways or pathways for people to follow, because people feel kind of with their hands tied, wondering what to do. They don't even know how to discern. The woman who was asking the wonderful question about discerning what to trust and what not. How do we know even to trust you? Although I do trust you. But you know what I mean? The discernment factor and the solution factor, I think, are what people are looking for right now. Thank you.
You should probably each one of you address it. Good question.
That's a very good question. From my answer is that for discernment, going back to what Dr. Farrell said about this new age of exploration, that's exactly where we're at. Okay, planet Earth, folks, is the old world. The new world is up there. And if any of us commoners, common folk, want the opportunity to discern what the truth is, we now have reached a point in history where it's trust your own eyes. And the way you got to trust your own eyes is to get out there yourself. Don't just listen to guys like us. Get out there yourself and investigate stuff. If you can get your boots on the ground of another planet, that's in the nearer future than you think, I think, then that's where we're at. And that's why you need to back commercial private space groups as much as you can, because they're going to be the ones that are going to need bodies up there, boots on the ground, working the factories and everything, and that's going to be the best chance for the common person to get up there and see for themselves. But that's where we're at. These breakaways and the government's doing breakaway stuff, they already see this as the old world. The new world is up there. And so it's kind of time to embrace that, I think. You're not going to fix this. You know what? There's never going to be a paradise. There's never going to be a perfected world. You're never going to do that. And my view is this reality we live in is perfect. It's exactly what it's supposed to be, because the only thing you can change is yourself. And if each person works on themselves, that's what they can change. But to change the world, make it perfect, that's a dream. And it's misguided.
I think everybody should have a chance to respond to this.
yeah, to add to that, I believe by attempting to reproduce some of these technologies that have been kept classified and reverse engineering them, getting some breakthrough in mass producing free energy machines, space propulsion devices, to get that out there, you bypass all of this. and except it's out in the open. And if we can get that off the ground without being stopped, without being suppressed, then we can bring this forward. I think that's a way to go, and be aware that the physics community is not necessarily your ally in this. They're going to try to stop it because physics is a religion. No, most people don't realize that. They are protecting their own dogmas. And free energy, these over unity space propulsion devices, they oppose their dogmas. What physicists call a standard model collapses when the reality of over unity is demonstrated. So either they try to ignore it or they will attack you. I was at the patent office. I was fired from my job because I put on my website a link to a conference on cold fusion. It had one cold fusion paper. Because of that, I was suddenly part of a conspiracy in the patent office. And this was orchestrated by the American Physical Society, the information office there. They were sending emails to all the upper echelon people in the patent office. And including my director got email. And they were making up all sorts of stories about me and another fellow, Tom Vallone. We were both fired about the same time. Tom was putting on the conference. And after my director got the email saying, look at what they're saying about Paul, 3 days later I was given notice. So I didn't have support from the patent attorneys there, the labor union of the patent examiners, because I wasn't there long enough to have that ability to have that service. But Tom did. He, after a 4-year battle, he got his job back and all back pay, so he managed to show them. My only recourse, I brought a lawsuit. I managed to increase the scope of the equal opportunity law to include scientific belief. So you can claim discrimination if you're fired from your job based on your scientific beliefs if your religion is panentheist. In other words, for example, Buddhist or even Orthodox Christian, they view nature as part of God, not separate. So therefore, if you're studying nature, you're studying God. It's part of your religion. And if they fire you because you have theory about that, that's discrimination. So that's out there as a possibility people can use. You know.
Jay, how do we discern?
The simplest way is to just believe anything I say. Just follow what I say. I'm kidding. No, that's a good question. I would say, just being a guy who studied philosophy, the most helpful thing that I learned was basic logic, believe it or not, because most people don't know basic critical thinking and logic because it's not really taught in academia much anymore unless you choose a specialized field where you're going to learn that, like going into law or something like that. Most people don't take those classes. So I would just say familiarize yourself with the basic fallacies, and then when you approach topics, news articles, politicians spouting stuff, you'll start noticing fallacies. You'll start noticing that, oh wait, that's a complete contradiction from what they just said. So I think that's the most practical, broad spectrum advice that I could give to everybody.
Joseph?
Well, yeah, pardon me, my sinus seems to have kicked in, but I I wholeheartedly agree with what Jay just said. I would add, may I have some water, guys, please? I would add wholeheartedly to that it's all too easy in this culture, thank you. It's all too easy in this culture to have whistleblowers, storytellers, and so on. And I kid my friends that the epitaph on my grave was, "He gave his life for footnotes." But if you, especially in a field like this, where you have competent scientists publishing in the field, publishing their research, you read his book, it's referenced, it's footnoted. There are little brackets at the bottom of the page where he explains some of the mathematical principles. Now that's academic argument. That's academic argument. And the other thing I used to tell my students, in other words, you know that you're at least dealing with a source pretending at the minimum to be credible, or that may be credible, if you see all the signs of argumentation and reason. That's paramount. I can get up in front of a group of people and claim all the things I claim on the basis that I talked to an anonymous insider and not have to footnote a thing in my books. It's a lot of work. So that would be my first thing. Tune out the whistleblowers and do real research and read and study the researchers. And I used to tell my students back when I was teaching college a second thing. Trust your own mind. Trust your own mind. That and reason and logic, argumentation with a model and a theory that's argued and proposed, then you're in a position to weigh it. And trust your own mind, because that's the ultimate authority and the only authority that you have to listen to other than your heart and your conscience. It's not on TV, and it's not simply because somebody has PhD behind their name. That's it.
Could I back up here for a moment to Walter's comment there about the going off planet as kind of the next step?
Right.
Is there a sense in which these folks, which may be enthusiastic about this or even behind it, want to get rid of a bunch of us before this is really accessible, before off-planet is accessible?
I would think, is that the full question, or did I interrupt you?
Yeah, that's enough of
Okay.
it.
To me, the people that would be interested in getting rid of a bunch of us have a different agenda. I think you're asking, the ones who want to go out in space, do they want to reduce our numbers? What's that? Yeah, and my view is, I would think not, because if they, here's the thing about the whole thing about the old world and the new world, and I think most of us have read the stuff that Columbus wasn't the first one here. The Vikings weren't the only, the first one here, that the Templars knew about the Americas, and, the leaders in the old world in Europe, certain ones of them knew this place was here, these continents were here. And when they decided to open it up, for commerce and exploitation, they needed the manpower, okay? So from my perspective of studying the parallels between now and that history, no, to me that would defeat the purpose. They need the manpower, they want the manpower. If they're going to industrialize moons and open up colonies on planets, they need people to build these things. They need people to run the factories and doing whatever they're doing. And so I think wiping a bunch of us out would be self-defeating. Now, the people who would want to do that, they have a different agenda. They're the ones who want to turn this place into their own private club. You know, that's my perspective on that.
All right, my question is for Paul. Regarding the alternative energy, it seems to me that the history of it has proven that mass producing, manufacturing a viable product will not be permitted. People who get close to succeeding have been destroyed. That's been the history repeatedly, it seems. So I would just comment for myself, it would seem to be the only way around that would be a design that is buildable at home by individuals, that like with a device simple enough that people could build it in a decent home shop kind of, you know, like it's something that's going to take major capital, major you know, equipment to build is not going to happen. And so I guess that's my comment, and I guess given that, given the history of you know, the people who get close to succeeding with this being destroyed, you know, it's not going to come from manufacturing. So how do you see, and also I don't think it's going to come from the patent office, where you know, to me it seems like the only way this is going to happen is if people have a simple, viable design that's easily constructed, that can be put directly into the public domain, and nothing else is going to work. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, Dr. Nasikas did get a patent on the first thruster, superconducting thruster, so it is possible. You try to write the patent in such a way that you don't emphasize the fact that it's over unity. They can probably figure it out, but still it's possible to get patents. As far as manufacturing, I think not to get scared by the past and just be fearless, go forward. If enough people stand up and make their own models, and then make for their friends, eventually go into business, you know, these things grow slowly, then I think that these dreams can happen. It does take money, and this is also a key. A prosperous economy like we have now helps to get seed money. So, and the ones that are the simplest, like you say, that people can make in their homes are going to perhaps make market first. Well, it's interesting, there was one on the YouTube where the guy shows an electrostatic perpetual motion wheel. You start moving, it keeps going. I don't know if some of you saw that. Looks like a Ferris wheel with aluminum strips on the side, and he's got something that comes close. It creates probably asymmetrical forces on the wheel to keep it going. So that's something that could make out of a piece of plastic and aluminum foil from your kitchen with the right bearings, needles, and so on to make bearings. Kid could make it. If you can make it in the right way, he shows how to do it. So you could take it into any science class, get the kids in elementary school, you know, start going to elementary schools, have the kids playing with this stuff. This is the way to go, education, you know. and be in the face of the physicists. They're trying to say this doesn't work.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for your research. We really appreciate it. In talking about research, I would like to ask you a question in regard to the Hadron Collider. Under the Secret Space Program Dictionary, how can you define the Hadron Collider?
Is that for me?
That was my question.
You want to
Yeah, go for it.
How to define the Hadron Collider under the Secret Space Program? Why they built it? Was there some ulterior motive to build the collider? Well, I'll tell you, it's pretty much worthless for physics, in my opinion. I mean, even the, what they call the Higgs boson, they didn't find the right particle. And then they
Yeah.
gave the guy the Nobel Prize, and that's sort of, a lot of physicists find that humorous. You wonder, what is the Nobel Prize worth anymore? You know? But yeah, I mean, you go to higher particle energies and you're going to produce more and more particles, but what do you learn from that? You know, they would better spend the $4 billion funding some good research, you know, like free energy research, maybe. I don't know whether their good use is for that. It employs a lot of physicists. And the other big waste of money is string theory.
Keeps them out of the way. Keeps them out of the race.
They say that maybe there's 2 physicists in the whole world that understand string theory, and the rest pretend they understand it. And it hasn't made any predictions that are testable.
Mm-hmm.
But it does keep, it does swallow a lot of money like black hole. Now there you have a black hole. It's the only one I would believe in.
On CERN? Yeah, I know. Well, I'm with Dr. Laviolette. I think CERN has nothing to do with particle physics. I mean, if you keep, let's imagine we have a racetrack and we've rigged a mechanism to take 2 grandfather clocks and whirl them around the racetrack in opposite collections and slam them together, and then say, oh, look, we found a piece of a gear. That's a fundamental building block of the universe. You know, we keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and more obscure, and I absolutely agree with Dr. Laviolette about the Higgs boson, quote-unquote, discovery. This is in some dispute by some physicists. The way to be quite honest, the way I look at CERN is, if any of you know the story of the Nazi bell that Walter was referring to in his presentation this morning, you know, what you're dealing with there is counter-rotating systems. And it's very interesting if you look at, I think CERN, I think particle physics, in other words, is kind of the cover story for CERN. I think what you've got there is a huge torsion machine that is a machine that is trying to engineer the magnetosphere on a planetary scale, and now there's evidence coming out that this is the case. And in addition, you've buried this machine in a morass of piezoelectric rock, you know, and they're confidently telling us, well, this is going to have absolutely no effect on the planet. You know, with a magnetic field, what, 15,000 times stronger, or 8 to 10 Gauss on the large collider. I don't remember what it was. Or pardon me, not Gauss. Teslas. Thank you. You know, this is an enormous magnetic field. So I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing if you're familiar with how CERN is set up, you've got the large ring on the bottom, you know, 100 or so meters down, which is the Hadron Collider itself, and then above that you've got a smaller ring that's canted off the axis of rotation of the large collider. You've got the proton synchrotron above that's kind of sitting on the rim if it were, you know, right down on top of it. So you've got these enormous magnetic fields, and they're spinning all of this in contrary directions. And I'm thinking, well, gee whiz, you know, this is a huge torsion machine. And if you look at it from the standpoint, if you're familiar with Gabriel Krohn, who eventually went to work at General Electric, the Hungarian electrical engineer, you know, he spent his life devoted to the application of tensor analysis to rotating electrical circuits and breaking electrical machines down and showing how you could use tensors to manipulate one machine into another. But here's the problem. When you do that, you have to use higher dimensional mathematics. In other words, you have to use mathematical expressions in more than 3 dimensions. So in other words, while CERN is confidently telling you, no, this isn't about higher dimensional physics or any of that, although now they're changing their story. If you've been reading some of the stories about CERN, well, maybe we are going to play around with higher dimensions and so on. Well, this isn't particle physics, strictly speaking. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing perhaps the possibility, at least, I think, that we have to entertain the idea that particle physics may be the public story and that this thing may be about something else entirely. And that something else may be the ability to manipulate the magnetosphere and so on, even perhaps the interior physics of the planet itself with this machine. So, you know, I've never been comfortable with the growing pantheon of the quantum mechanical zoo in the standard model. I just never have. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, everybody.
Don't forget the daylight saving times tomorrow.